This week on Gaming Sessions, we are going to talk about the biggest game at the moment, and that is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Of course, this is the second game of a trilogy that is retelling the story of the original Final Fantasy VII back in 1997. So those first two games takes place from Midgar at the start of the game, all the way till a certain big scene that happens. I personally have not went through that myself in Rebirth or the original game. This is my first time going through the story, the Final Fantasy VII story as a whole. And when I first played Remake, it really made me think about where the original source came from. So I bought the original in 2020. It was a good time. It had a lot of quality of life things that would really bother me if it wasn't there. It had like 2-3 times speed, so you move around the world faster. They also have like a auto combat system where you're pretty much invincible. You get all your gauges up, your limit breaks, your summons, all that, and you don't take damage. So after I finished the Midgard part of the original 97 game, I kind of dropped off a little bit. I did move forward with a little bit all the way, I think, up until the end of where Rebirth is going to end. I think so. The story is such a huge departure from the original game. But let's get into some of the systems and story beats that I loved about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm a little more than halfway through the game on chapter 9, and a lot of story beats that are coming to life in other Final Fantasy VII properties. It's been a wild time, to say the least. So for this gaming session, I'm gonna make it a small halfway review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Just talking about all the combat systems, the characters, some of the story beats. I'll try not to get into spoilers, but they might be some. And all the open world stuff that is added to the game that makes the game more modern and more lively. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the characters and all their progression within the whole narrative. In Remake, we didn't get to spend as much time as some of the characters that we have in Rebirth right now. For example, Barrett was a very big part of Remake and was one of the first companions we met. They didn't flesh out the character too much. The only thing we knew that Barrett is a father and an eco-terrorist that wants to heal the world and get rid of Shinra because of them destroying the world. But in Rebirth, they fleshed them out a lot more. We went to a place called Corel, and that was Barrett's homeland. We got the backstory of how he and Marlene were situated there, what happened between him and people within the place, all that kind of friction with Barrett and everything with his backstory. It was very good fleshed out cutscenes in Rebirth for Barrett, and same thing with Red 13. From where I am in the story, we don't get a lot of backstory with him, but we get a lot more of him, his personality, how he thinks, his humor. He's actually very, very funny, even though he's like very hard focused, and it's just so awesome to see the kind of shenanigans Red 13 gets into, especially with so many different personalities around him. So there's a lot of character moments like that we didn't get in Remake, but I feel like it was a conscious decision, because the whole goal, for my opinion, in Remake was to establish a relationship with Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith, and because they are very important parts of the story in Rebirth. In Remake, they do play a huge part of the story, but over time it got more and more important for them to get into the narrative. All these companions that you've traveled with are going to be a core part of the story. So far, it's been like that. Except for Red 13, he's been like, I don't know, he's still a little bit of an anomaly. And I feel like more and more I play the game, that is going to get revealed. I think so. And another character is Yuffie. Yuffie was one of the DLC characters in Intergrade. She played a lot like how she played in Intergrade. The systems in Rebirth allows more uniqueness of her playstyle with the synergies and the folios. So Square did an amazing job with mixing that playstyle that we are familiar with in the first game and adding and improving on that. But back to Yuffie. She wasn't even in the first game except for the DLC. And again, Square did so well in fleshing out Yuffie and the characters. We knew some of her backstory and the Wutai connection in Intergrade. But in Rebirth, we just get more of her. It's honestly, she's just such a joy to be around, and seeing her childish demeanor kind of gives less weight in the world where it's very goofy and some of the narratives can be serious and not serious at the same time. Speaking of the narrative and the story overall, it's very similar to Like a Dragon in tone. There are parts where it gets very, very serious and you're glued to the TV like 24/7, learning about each of these characters, the lore, why they have the reasons to do what they're doing, and all that is what makes that serious narrative very engaging. But on top of that, they have all these mini games that don't take the world or anyone seriously, which makes everything so fun. And Rebirth has this perfect balance of serious AAA storytelling that everyone can really engage with, and everything that comes with that high level production of storytelling. But you don't have to do that. You can just go around. You could do challenges for the gold saucer where you can ride chocobos. You can go on the Ferris wheel. You can go into a haunted house. So there's just some wild, wacky things that they go with the world that I'm just all in for. And I feel like that is core to Final Fantasy VII. That goofiness and that seriousness combining to make a fun game that people can get invested to, especially with the characters. And they do such an amazing job to recreate the towns that we all know and love. Well, fans of Final Fantasy VII know and love. I know some of the towns like Costa del Sol and obviously Midgar, but that's probably my extent. But seeing Costa del Sol, where all the beaches, the sand, the water is so different from what Midgar is. Even the open world stuff where it's just mountains. But even a place like Corel, the place is very red and a lot of mountains, very sandy and very broken down industrial area. And you could feel that from just looking at the Corel, all the destruction, the people there. So I want to take a second to talk about the open world aspect of the game. This is very new to Final Fantasy VII. In Remake, there is no open world to talk about at all. You're going through a hallway pretty much. You're walking through one end to the other of the hallway. That's been pretty much the experience with Remake. But in Rebirth, they open up a lot more. You can do many activities. There's obviously, for an open world game, there's towers, which is pretty crazy for a Final Fantasy game. There's boss battles. There's intel enemy fights where you gather intel for an enemy, for Chadley, and that will unlock a certain VR battle for you, which unlocks other stuff. There's piano playing. There's just so much to do in the open world that it feels very cumbersome when you want to just go through the story. And that's just my personal feeling. I know I could just like straightforward go through the main story and ignore all the side stuff and the open world stuff, but my brain doesn't let me do that. And honestly, it's pretty rewarding too, not all the time. The narrative and character moments you get with the open world quests, the side quests within the cities. They add a little more to the characters that are introduced with that mini game or quest, especially with the Queen's Blood activity. And that's like the new card game they made for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's kind of similar to Triple Triad, if you know what that is for Final Fantasy mini games. It's very similar to that, actually. The goal with Queen's Blood is you play cards that has an effect and use those cards to advance forward this 3x3 grid base or something like that, and you're trying to win each row. Queen's Blood has been very fun, and the more I play the game and the more opponents I unlocked, I just want to tackle that challenge. But that's just one of the activities you can do in the open world. Like I said, there's so much that I don't really want to get to, but I do it anyways. The open world is cool. It gives a lot more depth to the world, but it's not something you have to do. If you're only in it for the story, it's not mandatory. You're not gonna miss too much. There's a little bit you're gonna miss, but it's not like targeted to the main story. It's more for the fans of Final Fantasy series. The last thing I want to talk about is the combat system and how much of fun I'm having with it. So in Remake, Square really made the effort to make it a hybrid system. Square knows that the modern Final Fantasy audience wants a more action, more Twitch-based fighting system. For them to make that system a hybrid to cater to modern fans and older fans is just such a smart system. So if you don't know, they have an active action combat system, like similar to a Final Fantasy 16, a Devil May Cry, God of War, like those Twitch action oriented button presses, right? And they combine that with a slower, more turn-based system. It's not fully turn-based because the time is still going when you're pausing to the menu. It strikes a difficult balance that they nail like insanely well, and they added to the system in Rebirth too. So before it was very simple. You didn't really synergize with your teammates. It was just you controlling either Cloud or Tifa, Barrett, Aerith. You kind of switch through one character at a time and use the abilities when you're switching to that character. That doesn't synergize well with that teamwork aspect of the party. But in Rebirth, they added like a synergized attack system with the party. And it's not just one attack. It depends on your party and your certain make of the party. So a Cloud and Aerith synergy is different from a Barrett and Aerith synergy, or a Red 13 and Barrett synergy. Sorry. So there's a lot of that going around. You do have to build up the gauge. It's a little difficult for me. It's a little difficult to build up that gauge when you have lesser enemies around. For a boss, it's actually pretty simple to do. You kind of have to understand what the weaknesses of each of the enemies are, especially for a boss. And I really like that. It makes you slow down the combat, makes you think more like a turn-based combat, even though you're doing all these actions. So that's what I really like about this hybrid system. They strike well with both, and both of them are great individually. And when you put them together, it's just a perfect system. Now, it's not going to be as flashy or as nuanced as a Devil May Cry or a Neo or any of those crazy stylist action games. That's not what they're aiming for. What they are aiming for is to have both audiences of modern and the old school Final Fantasy player base. One thing I do want to talk about is the AI. They don't generate enough ATB, which is like the ability gauge that they expend to use an ability. That's different from mana, but that ATB gauge does not fill up fast enough. That leads me to switch over to the character, do some of the attacks, and it just makes me play like how I played in Remake, which is not the way I want to play. I know there are folios, which are the passive skills for each characters that can alleviate some of those problems I'm having with the ATB gauge, but I'm not there yet, and it just feels a little cumbersome. That hybrid combat system is so good. It makes you feel like you're in control of every little part of the battle. You could be the action guy, you could be the strategic guy, so there's anything you want within that hybrid system. Either way, I'm just loving Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as a whole. Everything about it. The character moments was wild. I can't wait to see more of it, where the ending goes. For me, who didn't play the original through the whole game, it's been a fun and exciting ride. Everything I thought I knew about Final Fantasy VII just was thrown out of the window. So that's exciting, even for old fans. Either way, I'm just loving Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as a whole. Everything about it. The character moments was wild. I can't wait to see more of it, where the ending goes. For me, who didn't play the original through the whole game, it's been a fun and exciting ride. Everything I thought I knew about Final Fantasy VII just was thrown out of the window. So that's exciting, even for old fans. I know the open world stuff is a surprise to a lot of people, and it's not people's cup of tea. It's mine. 100% it is mine. That's not something you don't have to get into. If you want the story, you just do the story. The open world stuff is something for 100%ers to do. Every moment I play of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it just makes me smile from ear to ear. Final Fantasy has been in my life for a long time, not through playing the game, through other people playing the game, watching Advent Children, playing Crisis Core, and all the lore theories and things that they kind of come up with their head went through me. It's just a special time right now for Final Fantasy fans. This game has been so good. It primed me off my ARPG kick that I had for months. It just get me back into single players and RPGs. It really got me excited for Dragon's Dogma 2. That's something I didn't know I was going to pick up, but after seeing a lot more previews of it this past week, I'm gonna pick it up. Till then, it's gonna be Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for me. But yeah, that's gonna be it for gaming sessions this week. If you like what I had to say, or you have anything else to say to me, you leave a comment down below. You can sub to the channel. You can like the video if you liked it. And if you want to watch me live, you can follow me here on YouTube. Also, you can follow me on Twitch, and all the links and everything will be in the description. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time on gaming sessions. Peace out, everyone.